Soulverse, the Federation and Human Ghost Stories, by eddieddi. Report to the High Council, Human Activity in Federation Space, delivered by High Judge for Interstellar Operations. Since the Federation-Human Alliance, there have been ever-growing reports of human ships in Federation space. Some on clear missions, such as trade or joint patrols. Some even have been documented as scientific vessels, or the humans' pleasure cruisers. However, there are others that defy categorization. Small vessels that bear no identification or similar. Others are stories of ships that slip into FTL faster than one can identify them. Normally, these are closed down simply as irregularities, or are caught at other areas and can be dealt with normally. There have been, however, stories perpetuated through Federation fleets, despite the best efforts of the truth officers on preventing such things. The sources are generally human crew members. These rumors and stories all have a similar theme. A ship that has some impossible nature to it, acting in an irregular manner. These stories range from malevolent entities out in the deep dark of space, through to rescues by impossible creatures. These stories have negligible impact on morale. However, they appear to have a direct correlation with the increase of irregular reports we are receiving. It seems these stories have emboldened members of the Federation military to report simple sensor irregularities or other spatial anomaly as these supposed ghost ships. With this not being a non-regulated category, each report has to be read by the captain and passed on to relevant parties. I would advise the Council to create a ghost ship category, so that higher-ranking officers' time is not wasted. Meanwhile, on the edge of Federation space, the two ships sat still in the void. The long-distance research vessel, uncreatively titled Research Ship Sigma-7, was docked with a huge automated cargo hauler. This was supposed to be a standard restocking meeting. The cargo hauler would drop out of FTL, the research vessel would dock up and load up on supplies before the hauler would jump off to its next destination. Neither ship was armed. Both were broadcasting panic beacons and calls for aid. The small fleet sat across from them, however, was armed to the teeth. A pirate fleet, 7 light cruisers, several retrofitted cargo haulers, and the flagship was a heavy cruiser with a human-made spinal weapon. Neither of the docked vessels would have time to spin up their FTL drives before being torn apart by the pirate ships. All hands aboard the research vessel had abandoned their tasks to watch from the bridge, or portholes, or other external sensor devices. The silence awaiting their death or enslavement was heavy with dread and sorrow. Then a call came from the human sensor tech. FTL spike! The dread deepened. More pirate ships. Could this get any worse? However, what came from the rip in space was not a pirate ship. Whatever it was not a pirate. It wasn't even a Federation ship. The captain's voice shook as he called out orders. Identify that ship. I want to know. He stopped as the dark black of space was suddenly lit up a burning red. The fleet that had come out of FTL had suddenly gone shields up. Normally, shields had no color, only flashing when hit. No wasted power. These ships, however, their shields were a deep blood red. Then came the flashing of weapons. These unknown ships had taken on the pirate fleet. The archivists on the research ship scrambled to identify the unknown fleet. They found nothing. Then came the quiet voice of the sensor tech. They don't have a sensor ping, sir. He sounded worried. The captain turned to look at the human, expecting a prank, which had been banned after the introduction of a whoopee cushion to the ship's galley. However, he was met with the sobering truth that this was no joke. All the while, out in the void, the fight raged on. The unknown ships danced through the pirate fleet, picking them apart as shots glanced off their shields. The blazing red shields matched only intensity by the fire exchange between the two fleets. There was a flash as the spinal cannon on the heavy cruiser fired. The shot went wide of its target, slinging a chunk of metal going several significant fractions the speed of light out in space. The attacking fleet returned fire, kinetics and energy blasts tearing at the heavy cruiser's shields.
Ha! Kinetics!
The captain of the research vessel called.
It must be a human ship.
The sensor tech rubbed his neck. I suppose so, sir. But we've not used those ship designs since prior to the development of fuel-burning engines. The captain looked stunned. He spluttered, which was an impressive noise coming from a tricle.
What? That's not possible. Are you suggesting these ships are some archaic impossibility?
He said, and the human nodded. The heavy cruiser's shield sputtered and died. As they did so, one of the red-shielded vessels pulled alongside it and unleashed a torrent of kinetics and energy beams, ripping the heavy cruiser apart. leaving it little more than a mild navigational hazard. As the cruiser died, it fired a vengeful parting shot from its spinal cannon. The shot impacted directly on one of the shields of the attacking ships. For the observers, the depths of the space flashed red. Once the light faded, the ship that had been hit had a huge section missing, its entire undercarriage gone. The space flickered and glowing, a shimmering red light seemed to come down in tiny particles, and before the eyes of the pirates and the research vessel's crew, the ruined part of the ship simply faded back into reality, as if it had never been hit in the first place. The pirates broke, turning away from the fight and fleeing as fast as their engines could take them. The bonds of criminality unable to withstand the destruction of their flagship and the unnatural immortality of the attacking ships. All but one of the attacking ships harried them out of the sector. One ship turned about, dropped shields, and powered towards the still unmoving research vessel. It pulled up close enough for the crew of the vessel to see it in all its glory. A wooden sailing ship, 20 cannons aside, 3 masts rigged with blood-red sails. She flew a black flag with a single white stripe down it and a blue dot in that white stripe. Stood atop the aft deck, saluting the crew of the vessel, was a strange sight. A human skeleton, dressed in ancient clothes, a tricorn hat atop his head. Strapped across his chest was a set of 6 flintlock pistols, and he had a heavy black beard that seemed to be glowing with embers of fire. Under him was the ship's name, the Queen Anne's Revenge. The research ship was stunned. No one quite understood what they'd just seen, or even what it meant. The sensor tech looked down at his sensors. There was nothing there, just the empty void. The captain finally found his voice once the ship and its skeletal captain had left them.
"Jenkins,"
he addressed the sensor tech by his first name.
"What in the name of the firstborn was that?"
The sensor tech swallowed nervously.
That was, that is to say, sir, it looked like a ghost ship?"